as I speak. I'm going to let the people in the waiting room, I'm going to disable the waiting room. Do not be alarmed by that, because as individuals come into your meeting, they will not be able to speak. So this just helps in allowing people just to continually come into your meeting.
Okay.
And Ms. Sanders-Mead, whenever you are ready, you're good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
Okay, welcome everybody. It is Tuesday, March 30th, 2021, and the time now is exactly 6:30 p.m. This is the Scituate Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12th, 2020, Town of Scituate public meetings shall meet remotely until further notice. This meeting will be recorded by Scituate Community Television and can be viewed live on Scituate Community Television Facebook Live. The recorded meeting will be available the following day on Comcast Channel 9 and YouTube Scituate Community Television. Okay. And with that, I would like to call the meeting to order. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to open the meeting.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I will call the roll. Ms. Risha,
Aye.
Ms. Jacine,
Aye.
Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
Miss Reverend Stewart is
Absent.
not present today. And myself, my vote is aye. Okay. All right, so the meeting is called to order. I just wanted to briefly say, as I do at the beginning of every meeting, that the land on which we are having this meeting originally was inhabited by the Wampanoag tribe, which has several different sections. It's not just one tribe, it's several different tribes altogether. And the total count of Wampanoag tribe members right now is approximately 2,600. They are having severe difficulties with the COVID-19 crisis, and that community is suffering, as we all have been, from this, and are attempting to seek as much assistance as possible with administering vaccines and getting people to vaccine sites. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge that the trial of George Floyd has begun. And I know that the nation is tense as we watch that trial for many reasons. And I want to acknowledge that as being part of the atmosphere right now. And with that, I'll go over some safe space and norms. This is a safe space for people of color and for all underrepresented people. That being said, I do want to say that tonight we do have closed captioning available. And if you do not want the captions, you can simply click the CC icon at the bottom of your screen and turn it off, but it is available. Underrepresented people and communities. Any comments that are inappropriate or have an animus in racism or bias will not be allowed. Your sound will be turned off if your comments are offensive to this meeting. This is a space where people can bring up challenges and questions without fear of repercussion or hostility. Please take the learning but leave the story so that people feel comfortable sharing their experiences. Please assume best intentions. All participants are embarking on this journey at different starting points. Listen, read, and be kind. Please use respectful language. Ask when you are unsure. The administrators will remove anyone with inappropriate content or acting inappropriately. I do want to say that Miss Kelly Harriman will unfortunately no longer be with us. She has family and work obligations that have kind of taken over a bit, and so she unfortunately had to bow out. I have discussed this with Select Person Curran, and the Select Board is aware that we are missing a member at this point. But we gain a voting member, I believe, in Miss Silvera, Miss Lucia Silvera. So, Miss Silvera, how would you like to be addressed?
Queen Lucia.
Yes.
Just
no
kidding.
problem.
Lucia's fine.
Yes, of course, of course, of course. I can count on you. Okay, so, all right, we'll go with Miss Silvera for now, anyway. All right.
That works too.
Good, excellent. Glad to hear that. So, okay, so with that, let's take up the minutes. Are there any questions, comments, or changes to the minutes from our March 16th, 2021 meeting? None?
I don't have any.
Okay,
Thorough job as always.
great. So I will call roll for the acceptance of the minutes.
We need a motion to accept.
Oh, is there a motion? Sorry, thanks.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
And a second?
I second.
Wonderful, thank you. And I will call the roll. I vote yes. And as your first vote, Ms. Silvera, how do you vote on the minutes?
I vote yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Ms. Yassin,
Yes.
Ms. Risha,
Yes.
okay, and Ms. Reverend Stewart is not present tonight. Okay, the minutes are approved. So we have some public comment tonight. I know I was approached by Stride, who had a comment they wanted to make on the recent shooting that took place that killed many Asian people. And there were kind of two back-to-back situations that were completely atrocious and have heavily affected the Asian community. I don't see anyone here from Stride tonight. Is that right?
No, Nikki Jean is here.
Oh, okay. I can't see who's here and who's not.
Well, she
But
was.
can we allow her to be unmuted? Is that possible?
Yeah.
She's good to go.
All right, thank
Yes,
you. So, thank you. If you'd like to introduce yourself and give us the statement, that would be great.
Sure. Jean Shobnak, 511 Hathaway Road, on behalf of Stride. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to read this statement. It's a statement of solidarity with the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, and it reads as follows. Scituate Together for Representation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity stands with other organizations and individuals in decrying the past year's surge of hate crimes against Asians and Asian Americans. We recognize that this rise in violence is a result of deeply rooted systemic racism in the United States. We understand also the role that anti-Asian rhetoric and misinformation play in the increased number of actions taken against Asians, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders. In particular, we mourn the loss of life in Atlanta this week, and we offer our condolences to the families and friends of the victims. We denounce all forms of bias, racism, misogyny, and violence, and we stand in solidarity with the AAPI community nationwide and here in Scituate. We call on law enforcement and the media to explicitly name racially and ethnically motivated violence as hate crimes. We encourage our members to educate themselves about this country's racism toward Asians, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders. We ask our members to commit to learning, listening, and acting to dismantle racist policies and systems. We encourage our members to take action by connecting with local AAPI-led businesses to let them know you support them, and engaging with elected officials and other leaders. Ask what they are doing to increase resources for intervention and prevention-based programs, such as anti-racism education and training in schools and police departments. And finally, we have a list of resources and learning opportunities. I won't include those here, but they are available on the Stride website if anybody's looking for information to learn more about the AAPI community and racism and acts of violence against it and opportunities for taking action. Again, thanks for giving me the time to read this here.
Thank you very much. If you can, if she doesn't have it already, can you forward the statement to Ms. Yassin, our secretary? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nikki, I have a question.
Go right
or
ahead.
Maybe a two-parter. Has the, maybe this is a question for you more because I'm not familiar, but has the town historically released any sort of statement, you know, when there are national incidences based in violence, like the most recent one, like the murder of George Floyd or others, you know, as a communication to its community members?
We did after the George Floyd incident, Celia. We haven't met, I don't believe, except for a special meeting yesterday since this, but it certainly makes sense. I'll bring it up with the chair. We should make a statement at the next meeting. So
Thank
it,
you.
you know, it hasn't, yeah, so we should.
Thank you. And then one other thing that you said, Nikki, just prompted me because I saw this on social and it resonated. And I because people are saying, you know, they're calling it the George Floyd trial. And we just have to be careful that George Floyd and his character and that of the Black community is not on trial. This is Derek Chauvin's trial. I probably mispronounced that. But just in terms of how we talk about these things really matter in the community. And I just wanted to share that because I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that. So.
Yeah, I think in the Black community, I understand exactly what you're saying. I think in the Black community, I don't know, amongst my Black folk, I think we call it George Floyd's trial in an effort to say it's about him in a positive way. I know that others may not do it that way, but it's to say that this is attached to, you know, him and justice for him. But I do understand misinterpreting who's truly on trial here. So I think we need to be very aware of that. I agree. Ms. Arnold, I understand that you have some things you might like to share with us this evening. So please just introduce yourself as our liaison to the school district.
So hi, everybody. Jennifer Arnold, Assistant Superintendent, Scituate Public Schools. And as Chairperson Saunders said, I am the liaison for the school district, Scituate Public Schools. The first thing I'd just like to say is just an update about our DEI Director Search Community Forum last week. I'm not sure if any of you attended it, but it was very well attended. And we did receive 70 forum feedback responses, which is really a high rate. So the superintendent expects that he will decide and announce the appointee at the April 12th school committee meeting. He's been interviewing the candidates that we put forward, and so that's the next step up for him. And then I saw in the minutes from the last meeting that Vice Chair Secor wanted to know more about the beloved equity audit that I shared. And so just to kind of give you a brief understanding of it, equity audit is something that's free to the district participating in this. It's part of a grant program from actually Harvard and another organization. I forget the name of it right now. But anyways, in any event, what they'll give us is data about all sorts of things to do with equity and diversity efforts within the school system. So they'll talk about curriculum, they'll look at sort of disciplinary data. They will give us that audit. They'll give us 3 reports over 3 years. So we'll sort of have a benchmark, and then they'll do it the following year. They'll do the same audit and see where the improvement is. And the reports are really detailed, and they give us information about how to improve areas that we may need to grow. And it's very, we will be compared to other school districts across the country also participating in this. So a lot more to come on that. Our team has been attending webinars with the organization, very detailed. I mean, these webinar sessions go for 3 or 4 hours. So we're getting a lot of information to be able to set it up properly and get ready for doing the actual audit. I hope that helps a little bit.
It definitely does. Thank you for that. Are there any questions for Ms. Arnold?
A question on the DEI director role. So the forum that I attended, so that was just for the singular candidate, right, Jamil?
Right. Yes. Yep. That's
He is the finalist.
You're right about that. Yes.
Is that fair? Okay. All right. I'm good with that.
Okay.
We also have as liaisons, Miss Nicole Brandolini and Mr. Michael Hayes. Have you talked to them about what the role or how they perceive themselves as liaisons, or and what do they do with the school district? I'm not sure.
So I haven't spoken with them about it. I know that they're both members of the school committee, and they both, when the school committee determined who would be the liaison from the school committee on this team or this organization, they volunteered. So that's as much as I know about it. I haven't spoken to them about any of their roles or what they hope to get from it. I can certainly do that and report back, but hopefully they will attend the next meeting.
Wonderful. Okay, any questions for Ms. Arnold? Okay.
I have one, if you don't mind. We'd heard talk earlier of a DEI committee that involved students. Is this still ongoing? This is at the high school?
I'm not sure what you're talking about at the high school, but there is one. We had a DEI task force over the summer. We had students that participated in that, and the main goal for that at the time was to write the draft the anti-racism resolution, which the school committee subsequently approved. But beyond that, we don't have right now. There's nothing going on. If there's something going on at the high school, I'm not aware of that, Ruth.
Well, no, it was the task force, I think. And I thought that was an ongoing committee that would continue to talk about DEI issues. But in reality, that's kind of now done.
Yeah. So the function of that was the anti-racism statement. And then once that was done, the school committee and the superintendent determined that they would dissolve that. And then soon, I would imagine this year, if not this year, early next year with the new DEI director, there will be a new group to form to do this work because we want students involved. kind of critical.
Great.
Thank you.
Are there any other public, anyone else want to raise their hand or? I can't see any faces. No. Okay. Great. Let's continue. All right, let's get into old business. We have liaison reports, so I guess we're already into that. Select person Karen, would you like to update us on what's going on with the select board?
Sure. Happy to. Last meeting that we had wasn't overly eventful, some very boring rote topics, so not too much, except for the acceptance and vote to make Lucia a voting member. So everybody was happy and more than happy to do that. A couple things I think you may find of interest. So we reviewed naming policies for memorials around town, because right now there really aren't any. So we want to make sure that we're fair and equitable as we do that. So we're taking a look at that to make sure that everybody has an opportunity and the same review, if you will, when naming different parks and schools and playgrounds and such around town. So that, stay tuned for that. That's an ongoing discussion, but we're going to wrap it up pretty quickly. And then secondly, there's also a new community garden that's going out in the Appleton Fields. I don't know if you are all aware of where that is. It's out on the west end. There are some new fields with some new trails and access that have been worked upon in the last year. And if you haven't been out there, get out there. They're beautiful. And so there will be different lots that will go up for a lottery for different community members to create their own gardening. So keep an eye out for that information. The Conservation Board is organizing that along with some folks from Holly Hill Farm who are very well-versed in community gardening. So we're looking forward to establishing some greater space in Scituate for that. And then last night we had a joint meeting with the advisory board for the public to come forth and ask any questions about the upcoming town meeting that is taking place on April 12th. So you can see that that's recorded and out there. So there weren't really many public questions. There were a couple, but there was a lot of good information shared. So, you know, must see TV again, get that TV rolling and watch that so you can be informed at town meeting. And I think we're good for April 6th for you, Nikki, right, to come before the board. So I think everyone looks forward to your update and the progress that you have all made.
Okay.
And that's really all I have. It wasn't a terribly exciting meeting last week.
Awesome. I wanted to give an update as to setting up the youth committee, youth subcommittee, and the subcommittee for instance-based in bias. I reached out to Ms. Arnold, who's been very busy with the DEI director, and we'll connect. And I also had several lovely conversations with Lieutenant O'Shea about, you know, what might it look like and what issues we should be concerned with and whatever. So we're continuing to work on that. I don't know, Lieutenant, if you want to add anything else. We're still in the early stages of all of this, so there's not a ton to report yet, but yeah, we've been having discussions about it. Nothing else to add? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Mandy.
You can't hear us? Okay.
That's all
I
right.
see. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right. Let's keep going. Is there anything else anyone would like to report in the liaison report section? No. Doing well. All right, let's keep going. All right. This is the big one for tonight. The organization of recommendations for the select board presentation. So April 6th, we just heard, we are expecting to do a presentation. And I think tonight, obviously, we need to kind of put together what we'd like to report and how we'd like to report it. I know that Ms. Yassine has started a document that helps us kind of organize what we want to say and what we've said so far at the last meeting. So that might be a good place to start. But first, I'd like to hear, I mean, my idea is that we kind of have administrative things to talk about, setting up questions, etc. And then we have kind of what's been going on in terms of speakers, etc. And then we have our list of recommendations, which we'd like to get out to them fairly quickly. So let's open it up for discussion. Who would like to go first? Anyone?
Has everyone seen the document?
Has everyone seen?
Yes.
Okay, so
No,
everyone.
I sent this out to Nikki today because I wasn't sure if she wanted to use this document or not.
Okay, so everyone has seen it?
No, no one has seen it. I sent it to you
Oh.
and Tom, Nikki,
Oh,
and-
oh, oh.
because I was not sure if you wish to use this document or
I
not.
see, I see. Okay, well, let's see.
Do you
Does
want me to
everyone
share the
recall-
document?
Okay, great.
on the
Does
screen?
everyone recall some of the things that we talked about at the last meeting?
Tom, can you share the document maybe?
Yeah.
Does
I
that
can.
make sense? Will that help foster the conversation maybe?
That's a great suggestion. Hang on one sec. I've been on Teams all day, so I have to get my Zoom back,
I-
you know?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Maybe Teams is crashing at your company like it's crashing at my company every day.
Don't jinx me. It's been good.
Okay.
All right, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, so here it is.
Okay,
gonna-
so I started with some of the stuff we had from before. Can you just scroll down to the very bottom, Tom?
Yeah.
Because up here is what I was
Do you want me to
suggesting.
go to the second page?
Yeah. Okay, down at the bottom, it says from 3:16 minutes. This is what we had said last time. So I've taken many of what we said down here. I didn't take some of the things at the bottom because we really haven't developed those, I feel, well enough for us to present yet. We kind of threw them out there as wonderful ideas without further development. Things like the town sponsor more diverse cultural celebrations. I heard very clearly on a Stride meeting on advocacy earlier this year that Ms. Canfield was saying, people come up with wonderful ideas and they say, okay, why don't we do all this? And their response is, well, what are you doing to do this? So I think suggesting that they do something for Juneteenth isn't going to work unless we have other people or other groups willing to kind of take that on, and just kind of putting it out there, like putting it on their plate, would not be a welcome suggestion. And again, people can decide if they want to put that back in. Again, developing a way for tourists to know what business support inclusion. People have talked about that a lot, but until we have a plan, I think putting it on the select boards is not going to be very effective. And then have town meetings. Again, unless we have a plan of what that actually looks like, and maybe we wish to set up a town meeting for our agenda issues. I took those off the table, and if people want to put those back on the table, they certainly may. So any questions on what I took off?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of these things are recommendations, right? We
Well,
don't,
they are, but I don't know if they'd be appreciated, but maybe Maura could talk to that a little bit more. In this current way of putting it out there, it's like, here, we're going to give you something to do. And I don't know if this will be something that they choose to do. Maura, what do you think?
well, they have a
Well-
I just want to say something really quick, Maura.
Yeah.
They have a recreation and cultural, what is the name of the group? Vice Chair, it's recreational and cultural something. So there's actually a
Drawing a
town,
blank.
yeah, I know, there's actually a town committee dedicated to doing
And I think
these
that it would be
things
very
or
good for us.
analyzing
I think-
these things.
Yeah, I think you're
Liaison with that
confused.
committee.
are you confusing that with the Scituate Harbor Cultural Committee? Is that
No,
what you're thinking of? I don't know what you, because I
I
don't know
think
what.
that he's
No.
thinking of the actual town department, which is, I think it's culture and recreation, which is the recreation department, the library and so forth. And then Bob Clark, which we'll get to this later, but he brought up a very good point that, we've been focusing on the town departments, rightfully so, but then there's also 22 committees, right? So it's a big, wide thing. So we're going to have to talk eventually about, probably sooner rather than later, on how to prioritize where we're going to be directing a lot of these efforts.
right. Well, we were asked to make recommendations.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think to Ruth's
So-
question and your question, Nikki, sorry, I want to make sure I was off mute. I think it's fine to say these are things that have been discussed and that you're starting to evaluate them. I hear what you're saying, Ruth, for folks to come in and say, yeah, you need to have another town meeting. Well, let's put some context around that. But I think to bring up sort of the ideas that have been socialized here is certainly fine.
So maybe put these in under developing.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're developed enough to make recommendations on yet, but I agree with you, Nikki, going to appropriate committee and discussing with them, what could they pull together for a Juneteenth, and then reporting back on that would be
Right.
more
I guess I just see
applicable
this
than
whole
giving it
process.
to select board.
Sorry.
Because I don't think we're done with these. I think we're just starting with them. And that's why I don't feel we're ready to report out on these ones yet.
Well, I don't know that we're supposed to necessarily solve things. It doesn't, there's been a lot of emphasis that we're not here to solve anything. We're here to make recommendations on how the town might go about making some changes to the way they do things. So I don't know that, I really just think, do we want to recommend this to the select board? I don't think we're at, do we want to figure out how to get it done on behalf of the DEI committee and the select board? I think we're just at, here's some of the initial things that we'd like to recommend to move us in the right direction. So I would say I absolutely would include these. I don't know that we need to distinguish between developing and not developing. I think we give it to them and they come back to us and say, we want to know more about it, or what other recommendations you have for, it's up to them to do whatever it is they're going to do with it. Right. And maybe in our second set of recommendations, we are, analyzing that more specifically with whoever is handling the cultural and recreation department. I don't know. We haven't got there, but I think all of the things crossed out should not be crossed out. I think they should be added to our recommendations.
Tom, can you do that then? Because you've got the doc. Can you pull that up top and put under recommendations and take out the crossouts?
Well, what do other people think?
Well, yeah, so I was going to ask, not to put more on the spot, but ask what you think the expectation will be from the select board. I think, I personally think, a blend of, a status update of, hey, look, this is what we've been working on. This is some of the things that we've stood up. We've done this, we've done that. We've got liaisons, we've set up some committees, and then we've got some things in flight, and we've got some initial recommendations. I think all of it should work.
Yeah, I think we should. I am a big proponent of throw things against the wall and see what sticks and then get a broom and clean it all up. But I do think that I think you're right in that we need to have here's the recommendation list that we've got so far. Here's what we've been up to, and how we are intending to move forward.
And maybe you do short-term, long-term goals.
Sure.
You've all talked about low-hanging fruit and quick things that you feel we can accomplish. You and trust me, every single board member recognizes and realizes how long and arduous public service can be when you're starting committees like this. So I quite frankly think they will be very impressed with all the progress that all of you have made so quickly. And you're about to hit the ground running in April, right? So that's fabulous. So I think sharing, where you've been, what you see as short-term and long-term, and maybe some easy things that the board should start to consider as you continue to evaluate and research is perfect.
I'm trying to Tom, I'm trying to take off the underline, the cross through.
Yeah, can you tell I'm a Microsoft Word guy and I'm a little lost
Okay,
right
I got it.
So some of the things that I don't see here are,
Well, now that we've done, now that we've gone through the bottom piece, can we scroll up to the top? Maybe start from there? Because I think that from 3:16 minutes, I've caught the rest of it.
Ruth, I just caught a couple things, and I'm sorry, I should have caught these in the minutes, but for that list of recommendations, just a couple of minor edits. So for example, the one that says, you could scroll down a little bit, I'm sorry. Whichever one that says the select board would share information with us that may include diversity issues. I
Yeah.
think we can strike that may include diversity issues, because, I mean, I think it's up to, like, Maura, for example, tonight shared what transpired at the last meeting, not that just that information specific to diversity and equity. And we may see something as having potential to be more equitable that others may not. So I think we should just remove that clause.
Okay.
And then I think, and Bob, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the part where he would be collecting and sharing the wage and race pay data with the committee, I think that's more public than just with the committee. Or is it by sharing it with the committee that it is then public? I don't know, but worth a question.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately public information. So, I would assume that if I'm sharing with the committee, it ultimately could be accessible to the public. But
And that was not in I did not put that in because I wasn't sure if that was something we were planning to do and haven't yet done.
well, I think it's a recommendation that I feel like all these recommendations are
Well,
like,
recommendations are something for them to do. See, we report out what we're doing. So that's the top part. And then second is we recommend that they do something about it. That's what a recommendation is in my mind, is that they
Right,
should take action.
right,
And
but they're like in control of all departments. I mean, there is Mr. Boudreau, but basically they're, the final say of all departments and all committees. So I think we recommend to them, and then they come back and say, okay, we can easily adopt these, but we need additional information on these, or, we now need you to look into these or whatever, and what that means for us, and if anything. So I don't know that we need to figure it all out. I just think we need to make the recommendation, and they should come back and say, we're going to send this to Mr. Clark, or we're going to, whatever they're going to do with it. It's our recommendation as a committee, and it's their choice to do with it what they will.
and I do see the sharing of the wage and race data. I mean, I think that's just part of our general data collection efforts, right? So it's just, we're gathering information on recruitment processes. We're interviewing or getting completing surveys with all the department heads. So I'm not sure that that's a specific, effort that needs to be highlighted. I think it's just part of our general, data collection efforts.
Yes, but as we move away from just kind of general asking questions, that could be a part of your job description, right? And the select board may have a say in your job description, right? Not that you wouldn't do it anyway, but
What
that it be
specifically-
formally placed into your job description. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm just giving you an example, but, or in the handbook. I don't see the handbook anywhere.
Okay, if we go to the top of that document. Okay, what are we developing? So if we start with the top part, these aren't recommendations for the select board to do. It's reporting out what we are doing. So Tom, can you scroll up? Because these are the things we are doing. We're creating a safe space. In fact, that should be creating a safe space for people to speak what is on their minds. Public comment section is drawn, input from multiple residents, etc. So that's what we're doing. We don't ask them to we're not recommending they do anything. So it's a report in on what are we doing. The second thing is the standing subcommittee on incidents on bias. The next is the standing subcommittee on youth. The next is our South Shore Unity Council survey, and that we'll receive that data and then use that to inform what we end up doing. Assisting Mr. Clark in developing policy and procedure manuals. Number 6 is initial development of plans to increase diversity, equity, inclusion within town personnel. And that's that survey that we're starting, then survey town personnel. And, you know, that's what that whole subcommittee is working on. 7 is administrative. The fact that we changed our name. We petitioned to allow a town employee to become a voting member. Select to maintain our records, and I am assuming that we end up okaying developing of procedures for accepting and tracking projects. That has not yet happened. You know, we have not yet voted on that.
Right.
So those are the things we are doing, not
Right, which is different
recommendations
than-
for the selectmen to do, but it's informing them of the work we have done over really a very short period of time.
Right, so this moves, if we're doing these things, this moves us out of just making recommendations into
Correct. We report.
assisting people and developing plans, et cetera.
Well, this is a report of what are we doing, and then things that we actually want the select board to do. That's recommendations. That they should take action on certain items. For instance, the options for gender neutral bathrooms, developing safe space norms, that the select board would share information with us, and we just kind of did stuff with there that we need to kind of reword what that looks like now.
Yeah, I think, I guess I think my point is that the developing section and some of the other things, may be moving beyond what the charge says. So
I feel this is
we're
our
supposed to
charge.
be providing, if we look at it very literally, we're supposed to be providing recommendations, right? And what I think we've learned in this process is that that's not all we're doing, or it's not, that doesn't kind of encapsulate the work that we're doing or should do as a DEI committee.
Okay, Nikki, the exact wording is to report to the Board of Selectmen on the results of its work at least one time per calendar quarter.
Right.
And to make recommendations based on the results of such work for the consideration of the Board of Selectmen within 12 months. So we report quarterly and we recommend at least once a year.
Right.
Nikki, can I just, I think what Ruth has here is great. And I agree with, this is our first report and we have to give them a status of what we're working on, which I like the 2 separations of the, you know, the way things are listed here. And we're going to have other recommendations. So it's not like a, you know, we recommend now, we're not going to go back and recommend other things. We haven't done the interviews with the departments. There's still a lot of work to be done. So I think we will have further recommendations, but I think this is, you know, captures everything that we're working on.
It does. It does. I think, I don't know that I'm saying it doesn't capture everything. I think it's important how you present things. I don't know if I'm getting, I think it's important how you present things. So we,
Right, well, and do you have another way you'd like it presented, Nikki?
no, I'm just saying in the recommendations part is what my concern is. Right? So last time we met, I said, are there any initial, let's just brainstorm initial recommendations that we'd like to present to the select board, right? And I
Yep.
think it matters that you recommend Mr. Clark develop policies and procedure manuals for the town or receive assistance with that. I think it matters that you recommend that. And I think it matters that they say, yeah, that's a good recommendation. I think it matters that you recommend the development of plans to increase diversity, equity, inclusion within town person. I think it matters that you recommend those and that they say, we agree with that recommendation. I know it doesn't seem, it seems repetitive, but it's important that people talk about whether or not they think these are good recommendations or how they would change it. And it leads our work as well.
But isn't that something in the discussion? Because I think we will recommend those once we completed those tasks. And I think we're working on them now. So.
I think we need to recommend them because even though we're working on them, they're not done. Like, we're not going to make recommendations on things that are already done. Right? We can do work to help Mr. Clark. We can do work to create plans, but
well, I think we'd recommend if we've created and helped Mr. Clark with the manual, then the recommendation is for that to be continued and reviewed every, yearly or something. But I think,
yeah, I mean, I think any personnel manual, any policy ultimately has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. So I think what we'll be doing is this, I mean, I'm going to be developing a number of policies that probably have nothing to do with DEI that, would be of no interest to anyone on this committee, but there's a number that touch on the work that we're doing here. So I think what we would be doing is we would be recommending to the Board of Selectmen that they approve the policies as developed by me with consultation with the committee. I'll also simultaneously have to go to the union to get approval from them. Those are all the processes that I'll have to go through before I actually present it to the Board of Selectmen. But I'll be presenting it with the knowledge that I did it hand in hand with the DEI committee with the recommendations from this group.
yeah,
So
I think
I
that's
get it.
important.
Recommendation of their approval.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important to add that to our recommendations. I do think that, what we're developing, we need to tell them what we're developing and working on, et cetera. I don't disagree with any of that, but I do think that I thought that our recommendation list was extraordinarily solid. And I think it solves what our charge is, and it may, see, my hope is that they review the charge to make sure that we're doing what the charge says, and if it needs to be tweaked by a word or two, that it does, because we're the first for this committee, and so every word counts, and how we do this counts. So even, I don't think there's anything wrong with making the recommendation of petitioning to allow the position of town committee to be a voting member. I mean, that's a recommendation, right? Or is that a report?
We've already done that, though.
Yeah,
So
we've already done that.
Already done.
So yeah, so I mean, the things that we have not done yet, we want to recommend that they do them and kind of get the like, yes, you're going in the right direction, or we can't do anything about that. I think it matters.
The way, the way I look at this is, and I'm probably just parroting a lot of what you're all saying, but recommendations to me, usually come after, pick any topic that we're focusing in on. You do a deep dive, you see what the current state of affairs are, you create some action items, and then the recommendation comes after.
Can
So
you kind of scroll up so we can see all the recommendations, Tom? Because I think we're talking about those more now. No, sorry, scroll down. Never mind. Scroll down. Yeah, so that people can maybe scroll up a little bit so people can see all the recommendations on the screen. Yeah, that's it.
So my point is, I think a fair amount of work needs to go into a particular topic, and then, subcommittee or this entire committee meets and says, okay, we've assessed this. This is the information that we've talked to this person and that person, and we're going to go forward with a recommendation to the select board. And if that's what this represents, then fine. But I think there needs to be, a certain amount of work and thought that goes into arriving at a recommendation.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that the recommendation is based on what we research, and I'm saying the recommendation is based on what we've seen so far. Right? So far we know that there, and I'm using you as an example, Mr. Clark, just because we've already started the example and it's taken off. But what we know is that Mr. Clark is working on the handbook and some of the policies and whatever. And it's not because we're recommending it, he's doing it, but we would like to recommend that actually happen. Then we assist Mr. Clark, he does what he needs to do and presents it. Yeah. And that's a recommend. It's almost like, and we're talking low hanging fruit this time around because we haven't questioned anyone, but it's almost like we're saying you can check this off because it's already in progress. And this is something that we would recommend be done. And then it's done and then it's checked off. You're saying, find out what's going on with Mr. Clark, or his department or whatever department, and then recommend what to do after that. I'm saying it's important that if the work is not done, even if it's in progress, even if it's almost done, that we make a recommendation that it be done as a formal statement that this is something that we as the DEI committee believe is important and should be done, right? If we in the future say, we think that now that we've created this beautiful handbook, we think that this handbook should be reviewed by someone in Mr. Clark's position, as well as X, Y, Z, P, D, and Q so many times a year or a quarter, whatever. That's a follow-up recommendation. So the other thing I wanted to point out was there were some really good things like letting tourists know of places that are inclusive in town, et cetera, et cetera. Engagement at the town meeting, you have that. Diversity and cultural center, because there's a building that's kind of, somewhat not used to its best ability, the community center on the harbor. Research and development of a sister city. That's something that they vote on. And then there was one other thing that I didn't see.
But Nikki, I think with those types of things, you do need to be a little bit more specific and have the committee talk about it a little bit more, because those are things that just came over the bow. And I don't recall all of you really socializing any of it. And not that I'm opposed to any of it, I just haven't really heard a lot of socialization. I feel like a lot of ideas come over the bow and it's just like automatically accepted that, all right, we just need to do this. So I think you need to give the committee time to really talk about some of these things. And maybe you say, hey, here are some things that have come across that we want to continue to look at. You just mentioned something that I wanted. What
Community cultural center, the sister city.
Oh, sister city. So we have 2 sister cities. So, to recommend that what's the additional city that, I think that's something we have to find out from a survey that we put out to residents, right? Because the way in which that's presented is that we don't have sister cities, when in fact we have two of them. We have one in France and one in Ireland. So maybe the next
Well, no,
one.
I think we were very clear when we did mention that, and when Ms. Dre brought it up and said there is a whole process and that she had found out what the actual process was. She did report to the group about that, and we all understood her to be researching a Cape Verdean sister city.
Oh, see, I did
And she
not
gave us
understand
some-
that there was one already in the process. So I must have misunderstood that. I don't remember hearing that or you guys all discussing it.
Yeah, it was a recommendation, and I said I certainly wouldn't mind, heading that, what's required. But we're nowhere ready to present that yet, because that is an entirely different committee that would run with that sister city program. But it is something that we've discussed, and I'm happy to continue working on.
Which would be
And
great.
that's
Yeah.
kind of my point
Yeah.
with this, is that that's a great thing to work on, and I think it would be awesome, but it's too early to recommend it. It's a body of work that, Angela Dre is working on with a handful of other people, and we might be able to provide an update on that work, but it's not yet a recommendation.
Why? Okay, so this is what I'm missing. I feel like I'm missing something.
Well, the reason I wouldn't recommend it, and being, Lucilia can jump into as a fellow Cape Verdean, there's a lot involved. And I've spoken to a lot of people in town, and they think it's a wonderful idea. To Mara's point, like a survey would go out. So the Cape Verdean family and friends that I have, I've done my own little survey to see if it's something that they think, would benefit both Scituate and one of the towns that was chosen in Cape Verde. But I've made it very clear, and I've asked people, would you be willing to serve on a committee? Would you be willing to, work on it? And again, I don't know if that's a 2-year commitment like other committees, but we haven't gotten all that in. And I would hate to recommend something that doesn't have, the people behind it to make it successful.
Yeah, and it's a great idea. And I think what's missed a lot on a lot of people in town is that much of what happens in this town bubbles up from the community and a need that a group of people find is something that is needed, right? Or that we need to address. Not very often is it a top-down situation, right? So to your point, Angela, you probably need to find some folks that want to work with you on that. A lot of the sister city projects are, which I think is great, are partnerships with the school system. So, you're going to need to have an alliance there, because it's about sharing educational and cultural values, economic, development. That's really what the other sister cities look like. And look, we don't have to spend all night talking about it, because I know it's just an example, but to your point, there are a lot of steps that take place. And I think the board will think it's great. I mean, I think it's like, hey, this has been discussed. To Tom's point, it's being evaluated, period, right? Because that committee will then have to come to the board, and the board will review it, sanction it, give their feedback and whatnot to make sure that it's successful. Because we've got to have that alliance with, the government body over there as well, to make sure it's really successful.
So I guess this could be a top-down issue. This could be something that someone from the select board would bring up themselves, and, it could start the process themselves. That's one. Two,
It could.
these are simply recommendations, right? I feel like this first go round is not necessarily, here's what we recommend you to do based on what we've seen or whatever. I feel like it's simply, this is something that should be followed up on, and we recommend this be started, looked into, or whatever.
Fair.
I don't know what the hesitation is with making the recommendation. I don't really get that part, because we're not saying, I don't think we're at the point to say, here's something we really just need you to do, although some of these we've already started. I think we're at the point of saying, here's what's come up in discussion and this is what we recommend so far.
But
And then
I
they
think
could say, well, we have
interpreting
nothing to do with,
recommendations.
what'd you say?
I think we're interpreting recommendations differently, Nikki. And I think
Correct.
part of that semantics of, what do you see a recommendation as? And I see most of these as reports on things we're considering, things we're looking at, things we'll go into more depth on. But to me, a recommendation is we are asking the select board to take an action on something.
I don't think we're
that's-
ready yet. I
But
don't think
I
that's
think
what
that
this is about.
But that's what a recommendation is. Then we don't have to give any recommendations. We can merely report. But, we had suggested recommending that all town and committee meetings develop some sort of safe space norms. If you don't want to ask the select board to do that, we don't have to do that. Again, recommending the select board share information with us, they already are. I don't think we actually have to make that recommendation because that's what our liaison report is.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what that meant.
Yeah, so if it's not specific to, it came up last time, if it's not specific to DEI efforts.
Yeah. Lucy is
then-
raising her hand as well.
Yep.
Does everything have to be a recommendation? Can we just do some things? I know that the gender neutral restroom sign, I'm in town hall, maybe Bob and I can make something happen with that. Maybe we can report that it's already done. Also with, being a Cape Verdean person here in town hall, prior to working here, I didn't know there was a community of Cape Verdeans, and what would have been a beautiful sight to, coworkers, what would have been a beautiful sight to see is maybe flags somewhere. I know in other places I see flags. Those aren't hard things to do to show that we're an inclusive town, or we want to be inclusive. Like, you do that just with action. So a sticker here, a sign there, not a big deal, but it makes a huge impact. I know that if I see a flag, a Cape Verdean flag, I would be so happy. I would be so excited. And since working here, I've met so many Cape Verdeans. And obviously I want everyone to be included, but I've just noticed that there's such a large community of Cape Verdeans, and I've spoken to folks here and some don't even want to come in town hall. And that's sad for me. And being here, I'm going to make it very accommodating, and not just for Cape Verdeans, but in general. People come in and they're like, oh, I don't want to bother you. Well, that's my job. I'm going to make you feel comfortable. So if you want people to feel comfortable, you just do. And I don't know if that's like a huge recommendation that we need to make. We could just do that. That's easy. It's simple. I don't know if I'm talking too much, but do you understand what I mean? Like,
yes.
Those are things that we can just do that shouldn't offend anyone, and it'll make a huge impact. I know that for me coming in, if I saw that, I'd be very happy.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think it would matter to you that this committee in particular made that recommendation publicly as a public entity in the town, that be something that's focused on and figured out. I think, I haven't heard from Miss Risha, and I haven't heard from, I think, Miss Risha, are you the only one we haven't heard from?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I'm constantly talking. But I would just say, I think there's a middle ground here, and other people have said it. So maybe it's, listing, for example, the sister city consideration and some of the other, instead of a recommendation, I think there's almost 3 categories. It's like the admin stuff under consideration. So it's like what we're considering. So it's top of mind, maybe for the select board, and we can follow up with more concrete recommendations. And then there's a 3rd category, which is the recommendations. Like, I do feel like, for example, like an easy one is the one about, sharing out information from the select board so we can make informed decisions. Like, we're already doing that, and I think we could recommend it. So I think it's 3 buckets, and I'm just trying to simplify the discussion here, but it is worth flagging things that are top of mind and important, like Lucia was just saying.
Okay.
Without saying we recommend you create a sister city now, because obviously there's the work that goes.
Well, I don't think it's now. I think it's looking for support for some of these things. Okay, understood. So is this
that-
the list? Mhm.
Is that, so I've just put in here, what are we considering upcoming actions or, considering, thinking about a sister city or other things that are kind of on our thought process, but we have not taken any action on? Because I really think that the recommendations for cultural celebrations and how we should support inclusion with flags or whatever, I mean, all those are things that we are thinking about further developing rather than we're asking the select board to do something about it.
I don't know. I don't know that that's completely true. I mean, the select board has a cultural and recreation department. What do they do with that? Maybe that could be better used. I don't know the answer. We haven't gotten that
Like,
far.
for instance, like
But
October.
we
We have
could
a
ask-
recreation, we have a recreation department. I don't think there's a cultural component within
That's
it,
what it's
but
called. It's
maybe
called
that's-
Cultural and Recreation Department.
No, I mean, no, there's a recreation department, but I think there's a separate cultural and recreation committee.
Right.
So I think that's the distinction, but the recreation department it's not, they don't have the term cultural in the.
Right. So we probably should, see what's going on in that committee, or
Right.
maybe they can give it a little bit more oomph or power or whatever. I mean,
But that's, I think, for
this
something for
list
us
is
to address.
What'd you say?
To me, that's something for us to address, to find out who would do this, how does it get done, and then make the recommendation once we learn that. But the fact that we've just thought about it and thought it's a great idea and not done that homework first, I think it just kind of falls and nothing happens with it then.
I think that we are presenting to people that can vote and change things. That's what I think. That if at that moment on that night, they decide as a group that this is something we should vote on now, they're capable of doing that and making that change. And that's who we're making recommendations to. This list does seem like a lot of people are fairly satisfied with it. Everyone's kind of weighed in, and I think it's a solid list. I obviously would add all of the things we talked about last time, and I would also add a review of the charge to be sure, based on what we tell them and report to them, that it's reflective of the work that we see is needed to get where the charge is trying to go. So
to me, Nikki, this is now your document, and feel free, you're going to be making the presentation, and
I want to be
giving you
representative
information.
of the group.
So you get to add in whatever if you want to put the charge on this document, feel free to do so.
I understand. I want to be representative of the group. And if this is our list, this is our list. Whatever I say beyond that, this is our list, right? So should we have report this information to the select board besides myself? Or should I present what we've done so far exclusively? Has anyone thought about that?
Maybe you and Tom as co-chairs?
Yep.
Okay.
Right now, I'm unavailable next Tuesday night.
Okay, that's fine.
I could potentially try to move some stuff around. I have something with my daughter.
Okay.
I do think it's important. It's not just you, Nikki, like this is a group effort, and if we're talking about inclusion, like we can't leave you to it when we all contributed. So I'll try to be there as well. I think if we can be, all of us should be there.
Right.
But in terms
With
of who's
presentation,
presenting,
Okay, great. Awesome. And I assume people will be sending us additional notes or making comments on this document. I think that the way that we should give it to the select board is probably in the form of a letter, right? It's because they probably want something tangible that they can hold on to after we leave and go do our work. So I think we can lift the recommendations and the things that we're working on and place it into a letter, and then have notes on presentation beyond that.
or before we
And
create more work for ourselves, Maura, is a letter what's more appropriate, or does the select board, would you be okay with a list similar to this?
this is fine. What, or if you just want to put a paragraph, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be that formal. But
But anything that you will review as a list like this, I think folks would like to see it. So just get it to Lorraine by, I think it's Thursday before the meeting. So that would be this Thursday, just so that we get a packet, you know, a packet of all backup documentation. And I know the board would love to read what you're going to discuss as well. So if you can do that, great. If not, I wouldn't worry about it. You know, you can share it afterwards as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to put the recommendations and the list of things that we're developing into some sort of, you know, document for you to kind of look at and read.
Yeah, don't worry. They're going to be so pleased just to hear of all the progress you've all made. So I wouldn't worry about it. And
Okay.
the only thing that I want to say about the committees, and I feel like this happens a lot during the discussion during these meetings, is that there are a lot of assumptions made when you see titles of different committees or different departments. So let's do our research. Let's make sure we know what we're talking about. So the Cultural Council that's in Scituate is really a subset of really a state-run councils. So they have specific charters. They get specific funding as well. So let's just make sure that we're really looking into the definitions and the charges of all these committees so that we can, as a DEI committee, impact them appropriately or, you know, make those inroads in the appropriate committees. There's no recreation and cultural committee. So I'm just throwing that out there for you guys so we can be effective.
Okay, I saw that somewhere. I don't know if it was your org chart or somewhere else, but I did see that somewhere. So I'll look into that.
Yeah, Nikki, it's on the Scituate town page.
It's on the
It's
town
all-
page.
Yeah, all cultural/recreation pages. And then it lists Scituate Maritime Center, boating links, events. So I don't see an actual committee.
It's not a committee. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that, but that is the
Subtitle.
heading of that page on the website. So maybe that's where you've got the cultural part.
It's possible. I'll take a look at what I have and see why I thought that. Are we satisfied with this list, this developing work, and who's presenting? Anyone else want to contribute to the process for next Tuesday? Okay,
I can help you offline, Nikki.
wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so will you unshare, Ms. Yassin? And great.
Yeah, you'll have to, Tom, you might have to make a copy of it because I don't know if you can unshare me since I started the document. So make your own copy then, and then share with Nikki and Celia.
Okay,
And it doesn't have to happen right this second, but
wonderful. Before Thursday, apparently.
yeah. Well,
So-
no, so you guys work on it because it has to be to her
Yeah.
on Thursday because they have to post, they have to get things out to the select people.
The document that's up there right now shows you in it, Ruth, so with the
Right.
changes.
No, I think you'll have to make a copy of that document, Tom. And when you make the copy, it's your document then, and you share that document with Nikki and Celia, because I don't think you can take me off of it. We can talk about this later.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So I don't know that we need to vote on this. There seems to be a general consensus on what the plan is. So let's move on. I sent everyone a copy of some of the work that's going on in other surrounding communities on the South Shore with human rights / instance-based and bias committees. I don't know that's anything to vote on, but I did want to have a tiny bit of conversation about that before we move through the rest of the agenda, which seems to be fairly quickly. Did anyone have a chance? We can also, I mean, I'm bringing it up. I'm happy to move it to the next meeting since we spent so much time on our presentation.
Well, just a note, again, I think there were really very interesting range of committees. Some of them did not seem very active. Others seemed extremely active. And I think a lot of people are doing a lot of different things, some of which sound like they're doing the things we are doing. Some are, again, it's a really wide range of activities. It's neat to see some of what the resources that they provide, and that's something for us to think about. Do we want to provide further resources on our website? And I think just that whole development piece will be interesting to see what our committee ends up recommending for us to do, and looking at what these other committees are doing. I think it will give great ideas for you guys.
Okay. Wonderful. Any other comments about that particular document, which we will add to the minutes? Is that right?
I don't add that document to the minutes because I can't add all documents to minutes, but I do refer to those documents in the minutes because those are things that were sent out to the whole committee. So anytime you send something out to the whole committee, I capture it and I refer to it in the minutes.
Wonderful. Any other comments, questions on that document, the committee, anything?
Which document are we talking about now?
The document on the Human Rights Committee / Instance-Based and Bias Committee. No? Okay. All right. Next is Vice Chair Secor, proposed requirements for project and/or subcommittee acceptance. This is something we talked about the last time, and you provided us with your suggested process for creating a subcommittee for this committee. So we couldn't vote on it because we had just brought it up. So I think this is probably the time to take another look at it. And
So this is it here. So I sent it out a few weeks ago, and look, I'm not trying to make it overly formal, and I think we've, ironically, since I put this together, I think we found a better cadence. We certainly did in the last meeting where we launched a couple of subcommittees, and I think this is just so that we're all transparent with each other. If we're trying to pick a subcommittee on hate crimes or what have you, that we just need a little more, right? We all agree it may be the best idea in the world, but who's gonna essentially sponsor it? Preferably somebody in this committee. If you know who else is going to work on it, that'd be great. And a mission statement sounds grandiose, but it doesn't have to be. Just a couple of sentences to just, describe the overall purpose of the subcommittee. What are the goals, and some actions, and when you intend to, if you know, when you intend to report back. And I think with that information, we can then, and look, that can be submitted via an email, a Word document, a Google Doc, whatever. Then we're all working for the same piece of information, and we can vote on it and get it launched. So the idea is a fairly, what I think is a minimally invasive process to get things launched, if that makes sense.
it does. Anyone else? Anything else? Okay, so let us put this new process to a vote. And presumably it would be, we need a motion and a second. So be as specific in your motion as you can be, and include adding it to Slack. Is there a
I
motion?
move to accept the proposed requirements for project and/or subcommittee acceptance.
Okay. Is there a second?
I would second the motion.
Wonderful. All right. Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
Ms. Silvera,
Yes.
me, yes. Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Ms. Yassin,
Yes.
Miss Risha,
Yes.
and Reverend Stewart is absent tonight. Okay, so that passes. Wonderful. Thank you. And if you would unshare your screen, that would be great. All right, wonderful. Proposed discussion and vote of the proposed project plan.
Again, this is one of these things that we started last time. I'm trying to get it shared, just a minute. It says, do you see this?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, this really captures, I think, I'm on the ongoing projects, and sorry, as you try to resize, do you see it enough, or does this need to, I think this probably needs to be bigger, but then I lose more pieces of it.
Right. Yeah, I
Hold on a
think we
second.
all have access to this. Is there anything that sticks out to anyone before we vote?
I've updated this, by the way, just to look at the what we've done since this was last shared. So for instance, I added the subcommittee on youth, subcommittee on incidence-based and biased, and the Unity Council survey. And what's interesting is that, you know, all these things get filled in really well, except the Unity Council survey, we don't have anybody in charge of it. You know, we
Right.
don't have, you know, we don't really know where we're going with it, but it was a really cool thing to do, and I'm glad we got it started. But then once we get this data, we do need to start thinking about this. This reminds us that we need to start thinking about who will be working with this. And we don't have to do that now.
Right.
But I do like this
Well,
because
I certainly brought it up, so you could at least put my name for bringing it up, and I will most likely be one of the people in this committee that will receive the results of it for our
absolutely.
town.
But
in
I'm just saying
general,
that
so-
this kind of just reminds us of things that as we start filling, you know, it reminds us that these are the things that we need to think about. And I can certainly put your name in.
Right. And just as a side note, Mr. Clark and Select Person Curran and several other people were very helpful in circulating the survey so that we got as much input as possible. So I'm anxious to see how it all turned out once they do their metrics or whatever.
Have you heard what type of response we got, Nikki?
I don't know yet, but I'm anxious to find out, and so I'll let you know as soon as that happens. I'll probably
Well,
send
and I know
something
that
out
this
to the
was
group.
also shared out by other, I know Stride shared it out. I don't know if any of the other community groups within Scituate shared
They
it out.
did. Scituate
So-
Concerned Citizens,
Right.
Scituate Pride, Scituate BLM, Scituate Moms.
Excellent.
So
That's good.
there were several different groups that received the link. So I'm hoping that worked.
And
Nikki,
then
do you know
this
when
is-
the results will come back?
I don't. They stopped on the 24th collecting
Okay.
for this round. There may be another round. So, you know, I'm thinking hopefully this week, certainly before our next meeting. So. All right. Any
And then
questions?
the other part is the proposed projects. And this is where I think that we have so much brainstorming that we could add a ton of things onto here already. And we have so many great ideas coming up that we really can't deal with it all the time. But we don't want to lose them because they get lost in the minutes. And this would be a way to kind of keep pulling things out and periodically updating these to to capture what we've got. So for instance,
Yeah.
I mean, almost that the equity task force idea that had happened from the phone discussion, I think that really looks like the incidents based on bias a standing subcommittee. It means a subcommittee that's ongoing. It doesn't just have a job and get done, but a standing one keeps going. So that looks like that we've already done that. And that could be something accepted by committee. I mean, this is already something like maybe off our list.
Mhm.
And we could make a note over there. So I like this part of it also. It could be expanded to add other things. This is not something that limits us in any way. It just gives us another organizational tool.
So I mean, the 3 or 4 different things have come up tonight, right? I mean, that could go into a list like this. So my question, who owns this list, or is it community? It's on Slack and we something comes up and we add to it. I mean, who's the admin of this? So for instance, Lucia brought up the idea of the flags, right? Great idea. Where does that go?
And who puts it in there? Because we can't all do
Yeah.
it.
That's what I'm asking.
Mhm.
Because I think
I
this
think
is a
we
great
probably
idea.
could all do it, but it'd probably be a really bad idea. Because it could be taken out in the sense that
Yeah.
you've got a document there, you can pull it out, do whatever you want to do with it. I believe you can then put it back in as the next iteration. Anybody could. It might be something that we want to collect information from. For instance, I can go through minutes when I do it and start pulling things out. We could have a brainstorm session at the beginning of one of our meetings and say, what are ideas that you've heard? We could even just circulate that. I mean, there's a ton of ways to do it. Truthfully, I would suggest that if Angela, I'm putting your name out there, but Angela or I take over, actually updating the document.
Because
Yeah,
I agree with you that things get, sorry, Angela, that things can get lost in the minutes, right?
Yeah.
And getting anything that has a chance to grow legs, get it in here so we can track it.
Yeah, I can keep track, since you're doing the minutes, Ruth, of things that come up that should be added to the project plan. One of the tabs I think we might want to add is items or presented to the board.
Right, and I think that's it. I think whatever makes sense, we just add it to this document.
Yeah. And again, remember when we can't use Slack to communicate. So the item will be there, but any updates should be managed by, one person.
So an idea would get emailed to you, Angela, and then you're responsible for getting it into this document. If people are curious what's the latest and greatest, they can go to Slack and pull it down. Does that work?
Yes, yeah, that works.
Okay.
Okay. Mhm. Anyone else? Anything else? Okay. Great job. Is there a motion to accept the project plan? That's the next, we need to vote on it.
I'll make a motion to accept the project plan.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second?
Okay. I will call the roll. Ms. Risha,
Yes.
Ms. Justine,
Yes,
Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
Ms. Silvera.
Yes.
I vote yes, and Reverend Stewart is not with us tonight. All right, so let's talk briefly about next steps for delivery of questions to department heads, and that begs the question, who should we start with? Let's just take probably about 5 minutes to talk about this.
Well, do you want me to start just to say that Bob and I have scheduled a meeting on April 7th to kick off this process with the department heads. So we will be having a meeting with all the department heads to let them know that all of you will be reaching out to them and share with them the, the goals and the objectives of the committee. So to set the stage for all of you.
Thank you, Select Person Curran. So just right. I don't know. I'm trying to stick to what we agreed to in the first or second meeting. Comments, questions, thoughts on where to begin? Anybody? Anything?
Oh, I can say,
Mhm.
maybe I can share my screen here because.
yeah, can you share, Bob?
Yeah, hold on. Sorry, I'm still sort of new to this. So I'm sorry. Are people able to see my screen at the moment?
No.
I can as well, Bob.
Oh, here it
Okay.
comes. Now we can see
Now
your
we see
screen.
you see your home screen now. Okay, where it's
Mhm.
coming up.
Here we go.
There it is.
So,
Okay.
you can see that.
Yep.
So when we initially developed a list of department heads, I think the list was, I don't know, it might have been 22 different department heads. And when we sort of, we processed that a bit, it was obviously a cumbersome task to think that we would have the time and energy to meet with 22 different department heads. So what I attempted to do was to sort of group them together a little bit better. This is the original sort of groupings that we had: Health and Human Services, Council on Aging, Veteran Services. I might have grouped these a little bit more: Public Safety, Finance. So there's a couple departments that are rather significant, like the Police Department. I think it certainly warrants its own conversation. The Recreation Department, the Library, for instance, there's a lot of activities that they're engaged in that I think it stands to reason that they should be their own sort of department for a single conversation. But I did look to kind of group a couple of them together where I felt like there was some sort of common themes, like under the very top, number one, Board of Health, FACTS, which is sort of a substance abuse education program we run, our Social Services Director, our Veteran Services Director. It seemed to us to have some logic to kind of having one sort of Zoom call with that group where we could process these some of this discussion together all at once. The Finance Department, Finance, Accounting, Treasurer, Collector, Assessing, all do very similar work, similar activities. So we also saw the logic to potentially sort of grouping them together. But I had also, one of the thoughts in this process was that we would have a representative from the town participate in every one of these meetings. So between Lieutenant O'Shea, Lucia, or myself, we would, and I talked to these guys, so we would assign one of the three of us to each of those groups. So that being said, we sort of dwindled it down to, I think that there's 11 groups here. That doesn't take into account the boards and committees. I think that, Nikki had actually sent out a document that listed out all the boards and committees, but that list was, I think there were 25 to 30 different committees that are operating in the town. So I think we have to be sort of conscious of what we can really get done,
I see that definitely, Bob, as one of our next steps is to be able to touch everybody, but I think we need to touch some people first.
Yeah.
And these are the town employee bodies that are interfacing with a lot of people. And besides that, what they do with the resident interactions, there's also the programming that they offer.
Right.
And that this could, the other committees could be part of our follow-up that may not have all virtual meetings with all of them.
Right. So initially, I think that some people might have even volunteered for different groups. I think that the groupings have changed a bit. So that's the other thought is maybe we kind of revisit that. These are if this is acceptable to everyone, this is how we potentially would group them together, and maybe we go through that process again and really try to decide who's comfortable with what group, who wants to volunteer for any one of these, and again, particularly if we're able to dwindle it down to a more manageable number. It may be a situation in which if someone isn't particularly comfortable with this process, and some of us are, maybe it's a smaller number of us take advantage, sort of participate in this process, than having everyone having to be involved. So that was the other thought is that we get some feedback from committee members and see who's interested in this process.
Bob, is this page all inclusive that we're seeing, or is there a second page?
No, this is it, you know,
Okay.
other than, I mean, one thing that the original document, it was almost like the org chart that we had used. We realized that that actually excluded a couple departments. So you'll notice under Conservation, Coastal Management, and Planning Town Hall, number 2 there, those are a few of the departments that were never really included in the original org chart. So we sort of grouped them together. They were sort of outliers, you know.
Good catch.
But again, we don't want to exclude, town clerk, obviously, your IT, your cable TV is important, so we figured we would just sort of group them together. The possibility exists that we reach out to these different departments and we talk to them about, being involved in some of these group conversations. Honestly, I feel like if a department head feels particularly, it's important for them to sort of go it alone and to have a focus on just that department. I think I think we'd probably be amenable to that, but I think we would approach it using this grouping here.
Who would you go with first?
I mean,
A lot of it's going to be, Nikki, as far as who's on it and then who be able to set up meetings, because we could even do things concurrently.
Right.
It's not a one and then another and then another. It's going to be who can meet when, and so that many of these could happen, within a very short period of time. Bob can be on a meeting, Mandy can be on a meeting, Lucia could be on a meeting. It all depends when people can meet, and all of those meetings would hopefully have another member of our committee also. I know that people kind of got assigned earlier, and that's why we were thinking about asking people to kind of maybe re-sign up and send us, what would they be interested in helping to present? And I think that that's something people might need to think about a little bit. We don't have to get everybody to sign up right this minute. But we would like people to kind of sign in. All of us on the subcommittee are willing to sign in, and we may sign into places where other people aren't interested, so that we get coverage for everything, because it's not just Bob, Lucia, and Mandy who will be on these. Preferably it's one or more other committee members as well.
Mr. Clark, who would you go with first for committees?
again,
Where would you start?
I think we, like you said, we do them all simultaneously. I mean, we're going to have a meeting with them on, a week from tomorrow. We're going to get the survey out, and we hope the day after that. We'll give them 10 days to respond. And then I think we try I wouldn't want a situation in which, we're not getting to department heads for another month after that. So I think we try to, if we can split this up between, even if there's just 3 committee members who are involved in this, it's 3 different Zoom calls. And so I think we try to get them all done within the course of a couple of weeks, if we can. So, and I think it's all just a scheduling matter. I don't see any group as having to be prioritized.
I don't necessarily think it's a priority, but you have a sense of what's going on in each department. So that's why I asked, if you were to choose 2 or 3, where would you begin? The other thing is, each department, I think we're going to do a comprehensive kind of evaluation on their initial questions, and then whatever follow-up we decide, that as well, right?
Yeah.
So to do that all at once can't happen, right? For instance, the meeting, if we did all of these at the same time, we could not meet about all of these in one meeting, right?
Yeah, because the follow-ups are going to be different.
The follow-ups are going to be different. The availability is going to be different.
Sure.
So we need to begin somewhere. Also, originally, I thought the thought was that we would present 2 or 3, 1 quarter, 2 more. I mean, we have 2 years to get this all done. So like 2 or 3, 1 quarter where we've worked it over completely and made recommendations, and then pick 2 or 3 more, worked it over and made recommendations. First of all, thank you for making the list. But second of all, do you understand why I'm asking you who you would think we should go with first? I'm not saying it's a priority, I'm just saying, if you know, for instance, that the finance folks are knee deep in tax, whatever, you might want to put them off. Or if you know that the elder council on aging is dealing with opening up the senior center, maybe they go in third quarter. I don't know. I'm asking you because you seem to have a better sense of things.
No, I understand. So I would say the library probably, because I think that they're probably a little bit more advanced regarding some of these efforts, and I think you'll get some good feedback from them. And I think they're in a good place to be able to do that. I agree. I think that the Council on Aging, this may not be the best time, and finance as well. You know, so maybe DPW. Sooner
Okay.
than later.
So there's two under cultural, recreation, and library. So the recreation department and the library, whatever we understand the cultural involvement to be, and then the facilities and the public works. That's kind of where you're looking at this
Right.
list.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Anyone else have questions, comments? Nothing? No one?
Do you guys
Okay.
want to see the, you know, we have a timeline of what we were proposing for our actions? Is that something you would like to see?
Are we, I think Bob mentioned it, are we sticking to the departments that we initially, you know, selected weeks ago? Or are we reassigning who's working on, who's going to be working with, meeting
Well,
with the various departments?
we no longer have Miss Harriman, and she was Veterans and Elder Affairs. But we're not going with that first, so we'd have to reassign that.
Okay, so
Is
who
there
was
anyone who wants a
cultural?
different assignment?
Well, I think that's what Bob was talking about, and I think we spoke about it in the last couple of meetings, that those assignments might not be hard and fast from what we put out 2 months ago, because we've launched a lot of other stuff, right? So the first couple of meetings, we were just talking about town departments. Now we've got cultural engagement, a number of projects. I meant community engagement, and so forth. So I think our thought was that let's not pigeonhole people into working with departments in which maybe they have no interest in working with. Certain people on this committee may be more inclined to work on the community engagement stuff as opposed to this. Does that make sense or no?
Yeah, I'm very aware of what the conversation has been over separating into community engagement versus dealing directly with departments.
If everybody wants to work on the town departments, that's fine too. I just kind of felt like there was, you know, kind of a divide and conquer mentality, which I'm good either way.
I think there are members of the committee, myself in particular, who've taken on more than just evaluating departments, because I think there's more to do
Absolutely.
to make a solid recommendation.
Agreed.
So that being said, there's no way that I would miss out on, one, understanding what the town's commitment is committee or department wise to anything cultural. And two, sitting in on what the recreation department is doing, or the library, because in one town, the library has been where all of the pride flags goes up. It's where all of the campaigns for Ramadan and Passover happen. So the library is a very important thing as well. That being said, I do know and have spoken to each of you individually, and I know that there are time constraints for some people. So if you're inclined to take a back seat until we hit financing, or, you know, work on other things until we talk about fire, that's up to you. what do we think about Mr. Clark's recommendation on going with the cultural recreation and library and the facilities and public works first? That is to say that we're still sending out surveys to everyone.
Yeah,
It's just we can't talk about everyone in one meeting, right? So that was the process, that we send out the surveys to everyone after the contact with Select Person Curran and Mr. Clark, and then we collect that and we evaluate that. And it seems like we're leaning on Mr. Clark's recommendations for our initial discussions. Do we think that? Should we think about it more? I mean, we're just getting this document today, so we probably should add this to our future agenda.
But Nikki, we're set for April 7th. The meeting is with Bob and Maura. And then April 8th, the survey goes out, is the plan. So that's what I'm talking about timeline. I mean, we approved these questions last time. And so with the discussion on the 7th, the email goes out on the 8th. We have follow-up reminders for people to get this kind of done. And then by 4/22, all of the surveys should be completed. And that's when we can then start doing preliminary analysis of the data and begin recommendations for the follow-up meetings with the virtual meetings for department heads. So people who've signed up to be on a committee would be able to then get information, start developing questions. We'd have to kind of play with that a little bit. And then by the end of April or May, start setting up virtual meetings. That's part of what we developed in our subcommittee as a timeline.
Right. All right.
And does everybody know that town hall is open up late till 7:30 on Tuesdays? So if there are folks that have work conflicts to accomplish some of this, I just thought I'd throw that out there for consideration as you try to figure out how to do this, because it's a big ask.
Thanks, Maura, because I thought that was Thursdays. But it's Tuesdays, right?
Tuesdays, yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, when was April 8th decided? I don't remember seeing that in the project plan.
That's part of what we're letting you know now, is that,
I see.
that's part of our report today, that
see.
the Bob and Maura are going to present on the 7th. That's why I was asking if you wanted to know the timeline. We kind of went into the discussion about the virtual meetings instead of a timeline. So if
Right.
it goes out on the 7th, the survey goes out on the 8th, they have till the 22nd to get it
And when
back.
is our next meeting? Our next meeting is before the 22nd, right? We meet on the 16th of April, is it?
Yeah, we've got, no,
Yeah.
it's not. It's not the 16th, because I believe the 13th is Ramadan. It's maybe the 20th. I
Yeah,
think it's
the 20th.
Yep.
The 20th.
Yep.
And then we get these back on the 22nd.
Well, that's
Yep.
the deadline. I mean, maybe we'll have a few back, but deadlines.
We
work.
should have a lot back by then, but it won't be done and it won't be analyzed yet, It's, people will do it real quick, some people, and other people won't till the last minute. It's kind of the way surveys go.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is, maybe Bob and Maura can glean some information from their initial meeting with the department heads, because maybe somebody will say to them like, no, like I want to go, I'm ready to go now. Like I want my department to meet with the committee, or I have some ideas, let's go. So I think beyond the survey, we might get some feedback from that might inform
Who wants to
just
talk? Yeah.
the pace of things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And we can share with you any feedback in a written form with the whole committee, and then that can help you make your decision on the 20th on who's going to take what. Or is that what you're thinking, Celia? That's what.
Oh, yes, I think so. While we await the survey results, I think any feedback you have from the meeting could inform some next steps, like, which meetings get scheduled, etc. Yes.
Is there a thought that we should actually even be asking for volunteers for department heads who want to go first?
Oh, I haven't even thought
I
about
don't
that.
know. I mean, I think we should come up
Why
with
not?
who we'd like to ask. And I think they should say, well, we're unavailable or whatever. And can we go next or whatever? Do
But
we have a
ultimately,
sense of,
it's our call though, right?
yeah. So do we have a sense of, I mean, I don't know, this might be information you want to bring with you to your initial meeting. Do you have a sense of where we want to start? I mean, I like Mr. Clark's recommendation. He made sense.
Again, to me, Nikki, I don't see where we're going to get information from everybody, and maybe then we can make further decisions on who we see glaring issues with, or things that we think need to be addressed quickly. I don't know if we need to decide that right now, because we will be meeting before we set up the next virtual meetings. So this is virtual meeting that happens after survey is done. So we will revisit. So maybe that's something we can talk about next time. And it may, again, my whole view is that we start pulling people together who can get together and have the meetings once they've developed questions. But that's not until May.
So, all right, so our next meeting, we take up again where we begin. And we
See if people
talk
will
about
submit.
whatever we've received so far in terms of information from Mr. Clark, Select Person Curran, and any surveys, responses that we have. How are we keeping track of the surveys? Does anyone know?
Yes, it is a Google form that will go out, and this goes into an Excel spreadsheet. Well, really, it's a Google form spreadsheet. So all the data, which is all, it's open response. So it's all people's information goes into that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then data can be pulled out from there.
The look and feel, Nikki, is very similar to the survey from the Unity Council. And then we'll take the responses and put them into that workbook spreadsheet that I've created that we've talked about a few times.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything else? Okay. Can you unshare your screen, Mr. Clark? Thank you. That is it. Is there any new business, other business, future agenda items? I think we kind of talked about tentative future agenda items, but is there anything else tonight? Okay.
I will not be at the 4:20 meeting. That's all I will let y'all know. I will be absent.
Okay, thank you.
I'll watch it.
Wonderful. All right.
Thank you all. You've done so much. I hope you all realize how much you've accomplished, because you really have accomplished a lot. It's not easy to work through municipal governance.
No, it's not. We have a very solid team. It's exciting. So any last words for myself or Ms. Risha before our presentation next week? And our next meeting will be April 20th at 6:30. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Okay,
Sorry, Ruth.
It's okay. So Celia, you move, and then I will second.
wonderful. Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
Ms. Silvera,
Yes.
Ms. Risha,
Yes.
Ms. Yassin,
Yes.
Ms. Dre.
Yes.
I'm yes, and Reverend Stewart's not with us this evening. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And the time now is 8:24 p.m.